As I get older and as I build this company, I realize more and more everything that we do is really just something that anyone can do. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that we would do over $1 billion in sales. We just thought it was a fun side hustle.
As Tony's, we're not interested in about just doing it the right way for ourselves. We're interested in changing the whole industry. You know, we really see that consumers increasingly are becoming more conscious of the types of products they buy, the brands from whom they buy, the reasons behind those brands. You know, and what we believe at Tony's, we offer and deliver, and that seems to be resonating and working.
I didn't even know anyone in food. I didn't know anyone to ask whether I was crazy or not. It was probably good because if I had done a lot of research and looked into it, I would have realized that the probability of success was probably pretty low. I think LesserEvil, you know, we're trying to make things better. And I think we're trying to put a positive spin on food and a positive spin on life.
What do you think about when you think of hype? Well, what about cookies?
I never imagined in my wildest dreams that we would do over $1 billion in sales. We just thought it was a fun side hustle.
With over 980 stores across the US and 9 international locations, Crumbl has quite literally taken over the world.
As I get older and as I build this company, I realize more and more everything that we do is really just something that anyone can do.
Founded in 2017 by Jason McGowan and Sauer Hemsley, the brand has figured out its secret formula. Yes, its chocolate chip recipe, but also its recipe for creating buzz. From its weekly rotating menu to its iconic pink box, Crumbl has mastered the art of leaving its customers wanting more.
In the fashion industry, they really came up with this idea of these drops, and it's an idea that we use in our business, and it creates that hype, it creates that excitement, and it also creates some scarcity because you can only have that cookie for that week.
There are 3 numbers to watch out for in Crumbl's story. 68,000, the amount that Jason personally invested into starting Crumbl. 300 million, the amount of cookies Crumbl says it sold in 2022. And 1 billion, the amount Crumbl brought in 2022. This is Founder Effect.
My name is Jason McGowan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a cookie company called Crumbl. I'm actually originally from Canada. I came here to the United States. I slept on my friend's floor. I just came with an entrepreneurial dream and wanting to build a better life for myself here in America.
Prior to starting Crumbl, Jason worked in technology at companies like Ancestry.
Before Crumbl, I was all about technology. I loved building things that were digital. I made that decision to kind of leave the tech world and go into cookies really after the first store opened and we started seeing a lot of success. I remember watching as families came in to try these cookies and I thought, my whole career I've been trying to bring people together. Is it possible that the solution is actually not a digital technology, but is it cookies?
This is Sauer Hemsley, co-founder and chief brand officer of Crumbl.
Sauer is my wife's cousin. Originally, we didn't know each other that well, but I did business with him before and I invested into one of his companies and it didn't work out. Ultimately, he had such good character. I thought, if I ever get the chance to work with this guy, I need to do that.
My role here at Crumbl Cookies, I have the pleasure of maintaining and developing the cookies every week. And I also am in charge of all the visual, creative branding needs for the concept and company. The 4 ounces, I think, is the way to go.
In 2017, Jason and Sauer teamed up and came up with the idea of starting a cookie company. With no experience in baking, they started experimenting with hundreds of recipes.
I had a full-time job, Sauer was going to school, so we would kind of get together late at night and whatever time we could to just keep making these cookies and then taste testing them. We would change out one thing, like the milk chocolate chips versus semi-sweet. Which one would be better? And we had no shame. We would go to gas stations and friends and family and we'd present 2 cookies and we'd say, which one tastes better?
It's really good.
And every single family member that we had at the time said, you guys are crazy. I think it was about 4 or 5 months that it took us to really make one cookie. We did everything backwards that you should do in a business. We thought, let's do a business together. And then we came up with a product. Then we bought the equipment. And then we started making the products.
That same year, Jason and Sauer stumbled across a building in Logan, Utah. This building became the first ever Crumbl location.
We realized that it was set to be demolished in 6 months. It was kind of almost an intrigue because we're like, we have no idea if this business is going to work. This could be really fun. Maybe this will be the perfect solution for us. And we negotiated it down to around $800 a month. I was like, okay, let's go for it. And so after we negotiated, that's how we got the building. Early on in Crumbl, we decided to self-fund it. I invested $68,000 into the business as seed capital to get us started and going. Everything else from that has been self-funded from the success of the business.
Within Crumbl's first 2 years in business, Sauer and Jason were able to open more than 15 locations.
Eventually, we opened up our first franchise location, and this was store number 3. As we opened that location, we had a ton of cookies on the menu. The doors were just flooded with people, and lines were just wrapped around the corner. We were desperately trying to keep up with all the flavors, and it was really, really hard. And so customers were getting frustrated, like, I drove all this way, I can't get this flavor. We sat down, we said, you know, out of every hard time in life, there's always an opportunity to think about how can we do this better? We came up with the idea of, what if we just rotate the flavors? Let's just drop them right on a Sunday where people can't get them. They'll be super excited to be talking about what flavors they want. And it allows us to continue to build and grow. And that's how the rotating menu was born. And that just changed everything in our business.
Today, Crumbl works with over 500 franchise partners worldwide.
The franchising was really born out of a need to give a family member one of our locations. And then as the friends and family stores started opening and we started seeing more and more success, that's when we realized, oh wow, this could not be just a Utah thing or a family thing. This could be a really big business. And at that moment, we said, we're gonna go all in.
In October of 2018, Crumbl came out with its own in-house app, which helps streamline the customer experience.
When you're done eating the cookies, you can rate how the cookies were. Or even before you're done eating the cookies, you can take a picture and send them to us. And so that lets us see across the nation, how's the quality in every single store. We can measure that quality, see changes or iterations that we need to do to fix the quality. I think another huge reason for our success is listening to the customer. In most businesses, when you go into an R&D kitchen, you come up with some ideas, maybe you have people taste them a little bit, and then you launch your product. Well, what we do is we actually put them into 50 test store locations throughout the nation, and they all taste them, and they give us feedback, and that feedback gets circulated back to our R&D team, and they perfect the product even more. And then we launch the product nationwide. So really a huge part of our success is leveraging our audience, talking to our customers, listening to them when they suggest ideas on social media. We actually listen.
Crumbl has also gained major traction online with over 16 million followers across its social media platforms. Shortly after the company launched its rotating menu, the hashtag #CrumblReview went viral on TikTok.
All right, we're at Crumbl trying the Tres Leches.
Just the right amount of pumpkin, just the right amount of frosting.
We were heavy in social media right from the beginning, watching TikTok and all these videos and really leaning into it and highlighting those people that were tasting our cookies and sharing their reviews. And as we did that, it just exploded.
With Jason's tech background and Sawyer's marketing prowess, the cousins grew Crumbl from a hometown bakery into a real-world unicorn company that brings in over $1 billion a year.
When you start growing a business, there's all kinds of different degrees when you go to different stages of the company. At the very beginning, it's me and Sauer running around, doing the deliveries, answering customer service, trying to come up with the next great cookie. But as you get bigger and bigger, it's a different kind of business. It's how you can service your franchise partners. We got to align all of us. So now you have not a few entrepreneurs, you have 1,000 entrepreneurs. So there's tons of ideas and different ways you can move the business. And of course, as you get bigger and bigger and more successful, there's all kinds of critics start coming out. And our solution is to focus on the positive. What customers love our products, and how can we surprise and delight and satisfy those customers? Being a CEO or an owner of a business is always hard on mental health because, at the end of the day, you're the last one. You're the one that has to make the decisions. If something's not working, the buck stops ultimately at the top. So although I'm at work and spending a lot of time in making sure I'm building this business, how I keep grounded is spending time with my family. That's important and even more important than the business. I never would have imagined that Crumbl would be a unicorn company. In 2022, we had our first year of billion-dollar yearly system-wide sales, and we have to pinch ourselves. As you scale fast, you're gonna have a lot of successes and you're gonna have some learnings too. For us, we feel like we've hit that point where we've succeeded in the United States and we'll scale back our growth and it will start expanding internationally. So as we go to Canada and to the UK, that's where a lot of our growth will come as international.
Crumbl also plans to expand its dessert offerings in the future. In January of 2024, it launched its first non-cookie item called the Cinnamon Square.
You know, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from starting Crumbl is just to get started. Whether you don't have a mixer yet or you don't have a recipe for a cookie, you just get started. You start doing things, you start moving. I think action in the early stage is what's really, really important to success, just to move. I hope that people look back at Crumbl and say, this is a company that allowed us to create meaningful moments with those who matter most.
This is Tony's Chocolonely. Tony's costs more than your average Hershey's bar, but how does it stack up?
Tony's tastes a lot more like quote-unquote real chocolate.
I could eat more of this than, Hershey's.
So if we look at dollar sales, consumers love chocolate. We spent $19 billion, which was up about 6% in 2023 over 2022.
I would pay double price for Tony's, for sure. It's also more ethical, right?
The company started by accident. The impact came first.
With its bold and colorful packaging, this Dutch brand is trying to achieve a huge mission: to make chocolate 100% slave-free. Today, 60% of the world's cocoa production comes from Ghana and Ivory Coast, where over 1.5 million children work on cocoa farms.
As Tony's, we're not interested in about just doing it the right way for ourselves. We're interested in changing the whole industry.
Tony's Chocolonely brought in $162 million in revenue in fiscal year 2023. So how did a relatively new company from Europe make a place for itself in America's crowded candy aisles?
The great thing about being the CEO of a chocolate company is you get to justify eating chocolate every day, so you have to be careful. I'm Douglas Lamont, and I'm the Chief Chocolonely at Tony's Chocolonely. So even though we're a Dutch brand by origin, our founding story actually starts in the US.
In 2001, 2 US politicians introduced the Harkin-Engel Protocol, an international agreement that was signed by 8 of the biggest chocolate brands, including Hershey, Nestle, and Mars. The goal? To end child labor and slavery in the chocolate industry. 2 years later, a team of Dutch journalists, including Teun van de Keuken, decided to investigate the progress the chocolate industry had made.
There were still huge numbers of children working illegally on cocoa farms in West Africa. They felt very strongly that this needed to change and needed to be addressed. How did they go about it? Well, as well as reporting the facts, they decided that they were going to get themselves arrested. And Teun walked into a police station in the Netherlands, having just eaten a chocolate bar from one of the big chocolate companies, and insisted that he was arrested because he was aware that there was illegal child labour in this chocolate bar, and under EU law, if you're aware of something and you still allow it to happen and you participate in that, you're breaking the law and can go to prison for 4 years. Obviously, the policeman looked at him rather strangely and didn't know what to do with this.
Teun also decided to persuade the world's largest chocolate makers to change their behavior.
Willy Wonka, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory film, was launching in 2005. They tried to persuade Nestle, who had the rights to that bar, to introduce a child labour-free bar. They couldn't do that and decided that they needed to launch a bar for themselves.
And that is how Tony's Chocolonely was born.
So Tony, because Teun, the journalist, the international name is obviously Tony, and Chocolonely, because they felt that they were on a very lonely journey to change the industry. But what we've also done to raise awareness of the inequality in the supply chain is to make sure that our bar does not look like a normal bar. And what that symbolises is the inequality in the supply chain, that some people have a big chunk, other people get a very small chunk.
In fact, some of the uneven shapes are actually the West African countries where Tony's sources its cocoa beans.
As a Dutch brand, it initially became very famous and grew very quickly to become one of the leading chocolate bar brands in the Netherlands. From about 2014-15 onwards, they started to expand internationally.
Tony's Chocolonely was launched in the US in 2015. Today, Tony's bars are sold nationwide at major retailers like Whole Foods, Target, and Walmart.
The US is clearly a really important market for us, not just because of the scale, but we really see that consumers increasingly are becoming more conscious of the types of products they buy, the brands from whom they buy, the reasons behind those brands. And what we believe at Tony's we offer and deliver, and that seems to be resonating and working. Our most popular flavour is our sea salt caramel bar. It's universally popular, closely followed by our milk bar.
Tony's Chocolonely is making a name for itself in a very crowded field.
The top 5 manufacturers control almost 90% of sales. So if we look at all the other small players that are out there, what we see is that 150 manufacturers actually account or have sales greater than $1 million in the US.
Tony's revenue grew 23% in fiscal year 2023 to $162 million. It also received around $22 million in funding. While the company's been growing at a steady pace, it's not making a profit yet.
We're not profitable, we're at a break-even position broadly as a company. We're making that choice to invest in growth. In the US market, we've just launched manufacturing capability and capacity in Chicago. That takes upfront investment. What we know is essential is that we demonstrate that we can be a scaled, profitable business. Proving that we're not just a chocolate distribution charity, but a profitable, successful business is part of our impact.
Besides its main chocolate business, Tony's Chocolonely also has a second business called Open Chain.
So any brand or any private label retailer can source cocoa from Tony's Open Chain and put it into their supply chain. In an ideal world, that will be much bigger than Tony's Chocolonely. We have huge ambitions to get to 5% of the cocoa beans sourced through West Africa, and that's only possible if other partners come on board with us and in the end grow much faster than just the beans that come from Tony's Chocolonely.
Tony's recently partnered with fellow socially conscious brand Ben & Jerry's.
They've made a commitment to source all of their cocoa beans for their ice cream pieces through Tony's Open Chain. And so for a big brand like Ben & Jerry's with a high commitment to ethical sourcing to come on board with Tony's Open Chain, to look at what we did, to compare it to what they were, the good work they were already doing on the ground and decide that our approach was the right way forward, was a big credit to the work that our teams have done on the ground. We have 100% traceability of our beans. We know every farmer that provides beans to us. And so obviously we source and collect those beans in West Africa. We convert a number of those beans into cocoa butter in West Africa. We then transport some beans and that cocoa butter to either to Europe or to the US, where that's turned into liquid chocolate, combined with all the interesting, great flavors that we have into bars.
Tony's Chocolonely is trying to stop child labor by addressing the root issue, paying its farmers a living wage.
What happens is those farmers are not able to have labor to support them, and in the end, their children end up working illegally on cocoa farms.
In 2021, Tony's was removed from the slave-free chocolate list because of its relationship with manufacturer Barry Callebaut, which it used to process beans into liquid chocolate. The company said in its defense that its cocoa beans are fully segregated in Barry Callebaut's process, and that the partnership with the manufacturer allows it to scale up its production on a global level. In a statement to CNBC Make It, Tony's Chocolonely said it will continue to source cocoa beans from West Africa as it works to solve the problems there.
So what we believe in is radical transparency. So we report on every single case of child labor that we find in order to address it. And it's only by being transparent about the problem and then actively addressing it that you deal with the systemic issues.
In fiscal year 2023, the company reported that it had found around 1,000 incidents of child labor in its supply chain. Chocolate consumption in the US actually dipped 6% in 2023, but Americans were still spending more than ever on it.
Well, part of the reason why we're seeing a decline in consumption is that most of us, even though we love chocolate, are still being faced with higher prices. In 2023, chocolate prices actually increased 12%, which was a significant increase. So faced with those higher prices, consumers once again are deciding, do I need this or do I want this?
Besides the chocolate bars, Tony's Chocolonely has been introducing new products to the market, like bite-sized chocolates and seasonal products.
We've obviously got lots of seasonal products, including our advent calendars. Behind one of the doors, we don't have a chocolate. Another great way to tell the story about the inequality in the supply chain. So when you don't get a chocolate in your advent calendar, you want to understand why.
So where are the original founders today?
They're still shareholders and they still regularly pop in and see us and see the progress that we're making as a brand. We're really excited about where the brand is going and where Tony's Open Chain is going, because we really feel that industry change is now possible. We're proving that we can do this at scale, and also with legislation being tightened up around deforestation and traceability, we feel like all the right things are coming into place to drive wider industry change. We're not going to rest until we deliver on our mission to end exploitation in the cocoa industry.
I didn't even know anyone in food. I didn't know anyone to ask whether I was crazy or not. It was probably good, because if I had done a lot of research and looked into it, I would have realized that the probability of success was probably pretty low, and I probably would have stayed doing what I was doing no matter how miserable it was. I'm Charles Coristine, and I'm the CEO and president of LesserEvil Snacks. I'm the guy who was crazy enough to leave Wall Street to run a snack company. Really where LesserEvil started to take off was we started making more mainstream products better. They weren't necessarily super healthy, but they were a lot better than what the alternatives were, and they appealed on taste. By becoming vertically integrated, we cut out all that margin that the co-packer was taking, and we were able to invest that money back into the company. The way we pop is amazing. We pop really low and slow. It's actually pretty inefficient. We want the pop to be right at the end of the tunnel. Path of least resistance is you put it into the tunnel, it's as hot as possible, and it pops right away. But then you get these kind of like squid, ugly popcorn, where we want to have these butterfly wings that are really nice and make for a lot better mouthfeel. It's got to have an amazing mouthfeel. It's got to have a certain level of saltiness. It has to have a certain level of expansion. We first hit 100 million in annual revenue in 2023, and then this year we're on pace to do about 165 million. My day was pretty crazy. I would start work at probably around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I would trade till about 5:30, and then I would go home and eat, and then I'd usually trade in Tokyo, and then sometimes in the middle of the night in London. I started suffering from anxiety. You know, sometimes I felt like I wasn't in my skin. I was anxious, and I knew at that point that I needed to take some time off. He wasn't sure exactly what to do with it. And I said, you know what, that might be interesting. And then I found the name kind of synchronistic too, like the LesserEvil. It was kind of like my lifestyle, you know, because I had started meditating and I was really into eating clean, and I had gone vegetarian, and I was really trying to, you know, dial down the stress. And I guess I felt like I was against all odds, but that was kind of the fire that I needed to really turn my life around. And he said, well, listen, this sounds pretty interesting. Would you consider working with me? And I was like, absolutely. I considered him a very close friend.
I wanted to get into something more solid than financials and numbers. I really thought something in the consumer products industry would be great. I went to business school to find something new in my career, and I ended up at a snack factory. The challenge coming into LesserEvil wasn't about changing things, it was about building from the ground up. There were no processes in place, no financial measures, no controls, no personnel. Everything had to be created from ground zero.
They just didn't have enough in sales. I mean, to cover salaries and office space and the co-packers. Co-packers take like 20%. I think the big thing was trying to change the packaging. At the end of the day, I think the consumer, if the product's selling really well, they like the packaging. This product was not selling all that well. The kettle corn had like a kind of devil's head and a heavenly image, and then the crinkle sticks had like a French fry, and I would say it was like 50s, 60s type branding. We were never going to progress. It was like we were stuck and the products weren't all that great. You know, you just didn't have any control of actually creating new products or in fact just even improving them. So I was like, okay, well, Andrew, you're either going to pack our bags or we're going to figure out a way to make our own products. It was a risky move. There was considerable money that we spent. We had to like make all our pennies count. So we started buying stuff in auction, and then we would get it, and typically it'd be broken, and we'd have to fix it and order parts and stuff like that. Thankfully, Andrew was an engineer, and he was able to kind of engineer this stuff. Back then, the way we tested stuff was we put it on the top of a fridge, which gets really hot for 3 months or whatever, and the coconut oil didn't go bad. For some reason, when you cook with coconut oil, it gives a really kind of coconutty flavor, but when it's on popcorn, it tastes like butter. It's really weird. It's like coconut oil was made for popcorn. I think it was 2014, I put a Laughing Buddha on the bag, and it was a coconut oil popcorn. All of a sudden, there was a different tension. We were a tale of two cities. We did well on the East Coast and kind of up and down this New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then we did really well in Portland, Oregon, California, Arizona. There was a different enthusiasm around that organic popcorn, and we could feel like it was something was working.
When an opportunity came to rent 20,000 square feet of space nearby, we realized that was the expansion play we needed. We were able to add another production line and have 3 production lines, which we thought at the time was humongous.
We moved away from the Happy Buddha into the Guru. I think he's kind of a joyful guy, and he's got a smile on his face, and the brand blocks really well, and we have a lot of different colors and stuff like that. The original Gurus were all off of characters that we emulated. You know, Homer was from the Odyssey, Henry was from Henry Thoreau. You know, they were all people that kind of inspired us. But now we're like kind of coming up with random new figures that we want to assign those attributes to. This is the Charles Guru. He plays tennis, he works out, and he loves his dog Ivy. I think LesserEvil, you know, we're trying to make things better. Evil is kind of an interesting word in itself, and I'm not sure I love the word evil, but I think some foods can be considered evil, and I think we're trying to put a positive spin on food and a positive spin on life.
I see no reason we can't see LesserEvil grow at 40–50% a year for the foreseeable future. One of the biggest thrills is going to the grocery store, even better if it's with my daughter, and seeing our product on the shelf and knowing that we brought that to life and got it here.
We've got a really bright future, and I think that we could be a brand that could be around for a long time, and I think we can make amazing products and make a lot of people happy. We're going to take over the world.